Well, everybody, welcome to the Bearded Hobbit's new little shop, my little tiny Hobbit shop here. It's really just a shed for my mowers and everything else, but I've dedicated a little corner just so I can get some work done. Today's project, I think, will be of great interest to many of you dads and moms, and that is upgrading these tires on your little radio flyer. These tires are great. They wear down after a couple years. We've had this thing for 6 years now, I guess. And the wheels have worn down. And if you've ever had to pull these things off-road, you know that these things can be really rough. Not only for the kids, but to get over rocks and pull and everything like that. And with it being October, hence a little Oktoberfest today, that's my partner to help me with my patience, is that in October, in November, my family and I, we go to the Texas Renaissance Festival quite a bit. And this is the beast that we bring along, and it can get very tiresome after a day of pulling this wagon around with kids getting in and out, that I've decided I'm gonna upgrade the wheels on this. I've got online and I've seen a few great posts about some of the upgrades, but for this specific model, it gets a little bit tricky, and I might run into some problems, but I'm gonna try to address it the best I can. And the big problem is the way that these front wheels articulate and how much space I have to put these new wheels on, okay? The back wheels are gonna be easy. The front ones are gonna be a little bit tricky, but let me give you a quick rundown of what we're gonna do. And what I'm gonna do also is I'm gonna document this in pretty great detail, and I'll have that written up on my blog with all the measurements and everything that you would need. So look at the description below. I'll have the link up there. So you can easily find that page. But just to give you a quick idea, at the beginning, we're gonna replace these tires with these tires that I picked up at Harbor Freight. They're just your standard kind of wheelbarrow tire. The problem that you're gonna run into, actually there's two, is that one, the axle size on this is not the same axle size for these tires. So you're gonna need to find a spacer for that, and I'll show you what I've come up with. The second thing is, these are very skinny tires, so there's not a lot of axle for them, versus these require quite a bit of space for your axle. So it's gonna be really supportive, but the problem is getting the right amount of metal and grip. But I think I'm gonna have just enough, just barely for these front tires. Again, back, not a problem. Everything's gonna fit. I've already measured that out, so we're gonna be good to go. Okay. So with that being said, let's get cracking on this thing. Okay, I wanted to show you just real quick what we're dealing with here. I've already taken this off of the front and the back on one side. So what you have here are these, I forget what they're called. They are called push nuts, okay? Push nuts for your radio flyer. And you can, of course, buy these back from Radio Flyer, but you can find some of these at Home Depot as well. Okay, so basically what happens is this is sit on there. There's little teeth here that grab, and then it fits inside this nice, pretty little cover. Okay, and then you have to pop this off, and then you've got this wheel. Now, I was able to get these off without breaking them, which is a little bit difficult to do. Essentially, what I did was, as it was on there, I grabbed one of these sides. I popped this off first, grabbed the side, and then just started twisting and kind of pulling. Not too hard, because these will break and snap off. But I did it like I was trying to unscrew it. Now it does eat the metal up on there a little bit, but I'm okay with that, because then when I put this thing back on there, it's gonna grab probably pretty well. There's no shearing where it's just gonna easily unscrew off, okay? So let me kind of show you the problem that we run into. If you look at this wheel, there's not a lot of axle left. So when we take this thing off, this is how much space we're dealing with, which is, I'll put the measurements in the description in the write-up, but you can see it's not very much. There's a spacer here to keep it off this arm. Now, here's the problem. I'm gonna have to remove this, because this is not enough room to put on the new wheel and then still have enough space for the push nut to grab on. So I'm gonna have to create a new spacer back here. I'm probably gonna use a piece of PVC. Let my spacer run over this, and then get the wheel on top, and then I think I'm gonna have just enough room, okay? Now the back, let's flip over to that one. Now the back, you can see here that this is pretty easy. There's a lot of space left on this one. So you got plenty of playroom on this one for the new tire and the new nut. I don't think we're going to run into any issues with that. Because if I pop this off, look, there's even more space here. So we've got a lot of room to play with. And again, I'm going to create another spacer here just using a piece of PVC, because currently what was on there was just a piece of plastic. Again, just as a spacer. There's lots of wiggle room back here to put on these tires. Okay, so what tires are we putting on? Well, again, I showed them to you earlier, but they are basically just your 10, I know it's kind of hard to see that. They're your 10-inch tires. Can't go 13 or anything like that. That's the maximum you can get in this thing. And you probably won't want to go any bigger either. If you did, you're going to have to redo everything and have a monster truck, which actually sounds pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to pull off the rest of these wheels and rack my brain and make sure I can get all this done. Okay, so we're working on the back tires and they're going along quite well, actually. Let me give you a quick rundown of what I'm doing here. All right, so I've cut my spacers, which was just a piece of half-inch PVC pipe, and just kind of figured out that spacing. Again, I'm going to have all this posted for you guys online, but I believe, if I remember correctly, it's 3/4 of an inch for each one of those spacers for this bar. Now, the other spacer that we need is to fit this axle to this axle. So this axle is 7/16, this is 5/8. Now, everything that I've ever learned about, like, oh, if you measure this or it says this, you double check it. Because on the website for Radio Flyer, these are listed as 1/2 inch, and they are not 1/2 inch. These, of course, are also listed as 5/8, and of course, they're not perfect 5/8 either. So trying to find a spacer for this was really tricky. I couldn't find any metal ones long enough that are required for this depth. So what I came up with is I found on Amazon a piece of clear PVC, which has a 7/16 inner diameter and a 5/8 outer diameter. Now, the problem that I'm running into, which really isn't that big of a problem, is the amount of wiggle room that I have is pretty much non-existent. So, to get these things on, I've resorted to a little bit of WD-40, which I suspected I would need some type of lubricant to fit from here onto here, and it's not a big deal. I've cut these at 2 5/8 so that I have a little playroom, because as you can see here, we've got the spacer, we've got some of the PVC, and that's taking up space. Then if we look on the back side here, you can actually see there's PVC sticking out here, which we don't want because that's taking up our room for our nut to grab on there. But because this is PVC, guess what? I can cut it off. I've got a razor blade. I'm going to cut this and trim that part off and remove it, and then let that spacer take the rest of that space up. That gives me all the room I need over here, and I can also cut it on this side and remove that plastic so that I've got all this room to play with as well. So be cautious if you decide, or you can find some type of spacer that's maybe metal. You may either have to cut it, or you might want to try to go one size a little bit smaller, which could be difficult, so that you have a little bit of wiggle room. Okay, so even though these tires can move a little bit, it's no big deal. Like I said, my choice with the PVC, I think is going to be nice for me. It's going to withstand, it's going to give a little cushion, it's going to hold everything tight, and it's going to take a while because it's not going to be in direct sunlight. So we'll see how this works over the long term. One other thing I did to get this on is I beveled the edges here, because the way that I'm putting this on is, first I'm inserting it into the tire. Okay, let me get this set up. So there's the outside. I'm placing the bevel side this way in first in the tire, and then I'm sticking the tire on the axle. That way the bevel side goes in through the tire and is at this lip, and that bevel sitting there. So then as the axle goes in, it's beveled on the inside as well, so that's a little bit easier to slide. I've had to hammer these on, but it did not take almost, really no pressure, just a few taps and it slides on. Again, WD-40 helps. When in doubt, spray it with WD-40, right? At least that's what my dad told me, or somebody did. I think it was you, Dad. Okay, so I'm gonna put these on and finish up these little cuts. Okay, both wheels are on. I gotta trim up the outer pieces of PVC clear here so I can put my push nuts on there. I mean, these things are not coming off by themselves anyway, so the push nuts are just going to be there for good measure. But we've got enough space. They're not rubbing. The spacers work really well. There's not a lot of give in here, so they're not going to rub against anything. I'm pretty stoked about it. I think this is going to work pretty well. All right, now on to those suckers, because man, this one could suck. But I think I got it. I might need one more beer. We'll see. Okay, I'll be back. Whew, man, that was rough. All right, let me show you what I've got here. The front wheels were pretty difficult. I've tried a couple different things. I think I've got it to work. It is not pretty, not even close, but I think it's gonna work. All right, let me flip this around here. Okay, here we go. So what I've had to do was I put on a spacer, a much smaller spacer than I would in the back, and what I've done was I beveled it on the inside, slid that on first, and then what I had to do was take an extra long piece, excuse me, of the PVC, because the ones that I cut for the back, I need it longer on here so I have more room to play with, because it was a lot harder to get over this part. So I put a long piece on there, got the wheel on top of it, and then I slid the piece of PVC pipe back up over the clear PVC and just kind of hammered it on right here. I can't get it to fit any more tightly on this. It won't move over anymore. I might try to hammer on it a little bit more, but it's not moving, and this is not moving off that PVC anyway. It's not like this wheel is going to slide off anyway. So I'm not too worried about that. The thing that I just have to be careful with is I've got to cut this off and make sure that I've got enough space for that nut, that push nut, to grab on, but I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. I think I've got plenty of room on this. So now I've got to do it to this one. So like I said, I put on the beveled side facing outward, since that's the one that's going to have to come back over. And then I'll place the clear PVC in the wheel first, like I've always been doing, and then push it on. So even if the wheel slides off of the PVC a little bit, that's okay, because I've got a lot of room to play with. The other thing that I've started doing is I've taken a much smaller piece of PVC pipe and using that to kind of hammer on the wheel, so that I'm not... So I can hammer this part if it's sticking out, or if it's not, I can at least catch that little lip on the inside and just kind of tap that in. Nothing too forceful, of course, just a little tap, 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 and of course, you gotta have your WD. Once that stuff dries, because it's hot right now, it dries off pretty quickly. The seal on it, the grip is still pretty good, so I'm not worried about any of this stuff slipping off, because it's on there pretty tight. Okay, so that's where we're at now. I will put the last wheel on. We'll take it for a test run before I put on the push nuts, because once those bad boys are on there, that's it. That's game over. So we got almost full articulation. It barely snags right there, but you know what? I am not gonna sweat it. This thing's beat up anyway. It can take it. It's a radio flyer. I can't even talk today, guys. Radio flyer. It's a radio flyer. It can do anything, right? All right, here we go. Wow, that was a little bit brutal, but it's done. This is it, final product. Got the wheels on. I just took her out for a test run. Worked out pretty well. I noticed it was a little bit heavier, of course, as you would expect with 4 new tires, but it seemed like it took a lot of terrain much better than just the regular tires. And I suspect once kids are in there and the weight is being kind of distributed between all 4 tires, and we get a little bit of cushion there, that it's probably going to take things a little bit easier for the kids, and will be much easier for me to pull. I haven't put on the push nuts yet. I'm opting to go with some that I purchased as a backup, which are this 7/16, and I'll again got a picture of that in the kind of write-up I do on my blog. And one of the reasons I like this one is it's much smaller. It kind of fits where I need it to be. But I'm going to leave them off for a couple of days and let the kids kind of ride around in it, so that if I see any shifting or moving, I still have my PVC on here, so I can easily get the wheel back on or off. So I want to kind of see how well it works with that. I suspect it'll be just fine. And then I'll just take my razor blade and then just cut that piece off, and then this will just pop right on there. But overall, I'm pretty pleased that, like I said, the back wheels, were a breeze. It was these that was the most difficult. Again, as I mentioned, you know, I've got the little spacer on there, but it's on there. I don't think it's going to move. It's not pretty, but it's not going to let that slide over. But I've still got, you know, a 1/2 inch of playroom, if not maybe 3/4 up top, to play around with it. So I'm not really worried about the tire shifting too far that way. Even if the spacer pops off or anything, there's a little notch in the axle here where this washer fit as a spacer last time, and that notch is actually helping to prevent this wheel from moving too far that way. So I might have lucked out on that part of it, so that if that does come off, I'm not going to worry with it too much. But to be safe, I'm just going to let the kids play around with it and just kind of take a look, see how this thing moves around. I'll try to get some final photos and final thoughts after we've taken it out quite a few times. So I'll come back and post that information for you guys. So just a quick rundown, just so you kind of recall everything that happened. What we have are 7/16 wheels, but we have 5/8 axle for the tires. And in order to basically put a space in there, I just used some clear vinyl PVC little tubing to kind of fit that, but it is very, very snug. If you can find something a little bit smaller, it probably will work out just fine. As long as there's not too much give in there, these tires will be okay. And that was it. Like I said, there's a lot of little bits and pieces that I've measured out, and I'll put those measurements online for you guys. All right, whew. One more project. It's not cooking this time from the Bearded Hobbit, right? Maybe next time. So there you go. Again, I know I've searched for plans of this nature online, so hopefully this will help some of you guys out there upgrading yours without having to completely redo axles. You can just go from what you got. The front tires, like I said, that's the most work. After that, you're good to go. So start there first, and then the back will be super easy. All right, gang, that's it for now. I'll do some more videos for my little mini shop out here, my Hobbit shop. And whatever strikes my fancy, that'll be what I do next, because I have no idea just yet. All right, guys, see you later. Thanks for watching.